Hi, hello, good afternoon. Right, one of the things I did forget to mention earlier with my son is that with his disability, one of the other things that he is left-handed. Now, people may or may not class being left-handed as being a bit of a hindrance. I mean, in the olden days, people used to say it was a sign of the devil, and children would have their left hands deliberately strapped behind their back and be forced to conform and use their right. And one famous person that people may or may not be aware of is Miley Cyrus. She was actually left-handed, but her parents didn't want her to use her left hand. They wanted her to use her right hand to sign things. So they deliberately forced her to learn to write with her left. Now, with my son, because of his autism and the fact that he wasn't unfortunately getting the support he needed in school, is that he lacks the manual dexterity to hold a pen or a pencil. When he writes, he still writes with a closed fist, even though he's 8, and he will write like this, like in this kind of movement, because he still doesn't have what is like the pincer grip to hold a pen or a pencil correctly. So at the moment, we still use pencils with him. And the reason for that is because it doesn't seem to matter which way you hold a pencil, the graphite will still flow. With pens, what we've found is if they are not angled correctly, depending on whether they're ballpoint or gel or however the ink is supposed to come out of the nib, my son cannot write with them. So something like a fountain pen, for example, which is something that they do teach them to use at school, my son still isn't able to use one of those. So one of the things that I have to do, and I do with the money he gets from the government, is I have to be vigilant. We will try and see whether anything that his brothers use who aren't left-handed, he can do as well. If he can't, then what I've had to do is go out and buy left-handed equipment for him. And what frustrates me is that sometimes, because it says left-handed on it, they try and charge you more money. And it's like, it's like, well, hang on a minute, why should somebody who is left-handed pay more for stationery than somebody who is right-handed? And again, what I was finding at school is when I was saying to them, you're having a go at my son for not doing a task or an activity. And then when I spoke to him, he told me that one of the things they did was they didn't give him a left-handed pair of scissors. So he was trying to cut out a picture with a right-handed pair of scissors, but with his left hand. And the blade is actually angled differently on a left-handed pair to a right-handed pair. So he was getting angry, he was getting frustrated. But at the time, he was only 6, so he couldn't explain to the teacher what was wrong. All he knew was that he couldn't cut out the picture like everybody else. And when we finally figured out what had happened, we had a chat with the school. And we were like, look, I'm not being funny, but, my son is left-handed. Not only is he left-handed, he is suffering with not being able to do the pincer grip movement. He has got low manual dexterity in his hands. And he has autism. And you've not told me to go out and buy him left-handed stationery, because if the school weren't going to provide it for him, I would have gone out and bought it myself. And again, people are probably saying, but you shouldn't have to buy it for him yourself. It should be provided by the educational provider, the school in which he goes to, because of equal opportunities. But unfortunately, what I have found is over the years, I've had to work with him, not against him. So again, he can't do buttons, he struggles with zips. So when I buy him clothes, we try to find clothes that he finds easy to get on and off himself, again, to give him that extra independence. So one of the things, obviously, they ask you on the assessment for disability living allowances, can your child do this? Can your child do that? And we've had to say no, because he lacks the manual dexterity to do so. That doesn't mean that we don't try to encourage him. So like with his coat, for example, it has got poppers and it has a zip. So if he can't do the zip up, he can do the poppers. So, it's part of the battle, so to speak, overcome. But it would be great if he could work more on his manual dexterity. But at the same time, he finds it really, really hard. And anything he finds difficult or a challenge is quite a trigger for him. So again, it's something that we try to do, but we have to kind of incorporate it within everyday routine, everyday living, and try to make it not a chore. Because the amount of times my little boy has said to me, "Oh, my brain is broken. Mommy, can I go and have a new brain?" And then I'll be able to do things like my brothers. And maybe then I can get to go to school and be a normal child. And when you hear your child say that, that's actually quite upsetting. And I did try to get him some sort of counselling or support for that from RISE, who work with young people with mental health and wellbeing, even young minds. And they basically said, "We can't do anything to help you. He's too young." And I'm like, okay, well, you explain to me then what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to say to my child when he's telling me I'm going to go and Google on the internet how to have brain surgery so that I can have a brain transplant. I mean, this is a child who can't even tie his own shoelaces or needs 24/7 supervision, yet he knows how to work my phone better than me, and he can retain memory of every single canal bridge in the whole of Warwickshire. And yet, if you were to ask him, I don't know, like how to make cheese on toast, even though he's 8, he'd probably set the house on fire. And people are probably saying, well, how many 8-year-olds would honestly know how to make cheese on toast? But I remember when I was younger, I've never been a really good cook because of my dyslexia. But the one thing that I always had to do for myself was make my own sandwiches every morning for school. And cheese and bread was one of the staple diets of my childhood. Yet with my son, he's still not able to achieve that. But he knows all of his times table. So it's about working with him. So again, the fact that he does have disability living allowance, it will help to pay for left-handing tools and equipment that he's going to need in order to make things a little bit more manageable.